One of the experts here for the convention is Jonathan Chester. He's combined a love of travel with a talent for photography. He's worked in exotic locations all over the world, but his favourite subject is the Antarctic. He's been there 7 times, joining expeditions to Heard Island and Big Ben Mountain. He was also part of the bicentennial Antarctic expedition, which made the first ascent of Mount Minto. His pictures of that journey are contained in the book The Loneliest Mountain. While few amateur photographers will have the resources to journey there themselves, his experiences and expertise will inspire them.
What I'm talking about is how to take great photographs in the Antarctic and some of my experiences there.
But according to Jonathan, there's more to his photos than the image you see on paper.
Usually there's a special thing for me in that quite often there's difficulties that I had in getting them. Either I was shooting at midnight and my hands were frozen, or I was in a little rubber boat, or the wind was blowing at 100 knots, or my beard was frozen, or so the pictures have one story, but it's the how I got the pictures which I think will interest people in tonight's lecture.
As part of the convention, an exhibition of his work is on display at the regional library. Works by some talented amateur photographers will also be on show at City Hall for the rest of the week.
In conditions that were near perfect for golf, Helen Greenwood from Toronto Country Club scorched around the first 18 holes to return a 5-over par 76 and lead the field by 2 shots. Louise Mounser from Hillsborough Charlestown was next and was looking a real threat to the leader. A further shot back was 19-year-old Katrina Skinner from Maitland, who fired a 79 and then a host of players on 80, including the eventual winner. With lunch out of the way, Carolyn Pawley set about grabbing the lead, and she played magnificent golf over the final 18 holes to win the tournament by 1 shot with scores of 80, 75 for a total of 155. A further shot back in second place was Lorraine Ramsey from Nelson Bay, who also had a super last 18, shooting 76 to finish on 156. And the youngster of the field, Katrina Skinner, hung on to finish in third spot with a score of 157.
In the past, fire has swept through bushland at the back of Rankin Park Hospital, and teachers at this nearby childcare centre fear one day the facility may be threatened. If that does happen, a plan has been carefully prepared to evacuate the 40 children. Today that was put to the test with a simulated exercise. To make the evacuation seem real, smoke issued from a machine near the building. Once the fire was noticed, the brigade was called. The children, some unable to walk, were bundled into prams and backpacks and ushered to a nearby car park. An innovative idea of the centre is to have all the older children led out by a rope and the younger children guided by restraints. By the time all the occupants were safely outside, the brigade had arrived and firefighters with breathing apparatus checked to see that no one was left behind. Although this was only a simulated exercise, all went smoothly. If the real thing does happen, there are other measures which must be taken into consideration.
Children could be frightened and they may let go of the rope, so you have to take that contingency into account.
The exercise is one of 4 being conducted by the Hunter Area Health Service as part of Fire Awareness Week.
We play act these sort of situations to give these people some idea of what perhaps they should do. And in this environment that we have here with all these kids, we can't afford it, can we?
The new office in the State Bank building on the corner of Hunter and Bolton Streets will process around 65,000 passports a year. That's more than a 400% increase on its turnover 8 years ago.
The Newcastle Passport Office is by far the most efficient passport office we have in Australia.
Though the new office has a front counter for personal applications, 80% of requests come direct from post offices from an area south to the Central Coast to as far north as the Queensland border. New technology has an important part to play. Computers are internationally linked. Already passports are printed by laser, then laminated, to make a forgery an almost impossible task. But by the middle of next year, the process will be even more high-tech, with photographs and signatures directly imaged onto laminate and also stored on a database. Eventually, these details and more will scroll up on a computer within seconds when a traveller's passport is presented at international borders.
The Hunter River prawn season was officially declared open on October 1, but prawns work by nature, not the calendar. Winter rains have flushed too many young prawns downstream, convincing fishermen to wait a month before they cast their nets. Their voluntary move will allow the smaller prawns to return to nurseries upstream to mature.
And we feel that if we can give it an extra month, that there should be a better run of prawns for everybody. We're looking after the environment as it's going to look after us.
The delay has placed financial pressure on many fishermen who wait anxiously for the start of the season. For the moment, there's little to do but maintenance, but old hands say the late catch will pay off for both the fishermen and the river.
But it's made it very tough for them. It was a big decision for them to say, well, we'll hold it back, but we have had the assurance from the fisheries that if we did this, they will extend us an extra month at the end of the season.
For now, Hunter River prawns are strictly for the birds, but come October 29, the river's 33 endorsed trawlers will ply the waters in search of their lucrative catch. Leslie Robinson, NBN News.
The 11-member Hunter delegation got 1.5 hours with the Prime Minister yesterday when it surprised him with a face-saving compromise deal. It involved leaving the Search and Rescue Unit in Canberra and establishing the business side of the Maritime Safety Authority in Newcastle at a cost of just under $11 million.
He was not aware that that proposal would be brought before him. He said that we came in good faith. We didn't come down here just to whinge. And we didn't come down here to say Newcastle wants a handout, because Newcastle doesn't need a handout.
Under the proposal, which Mr Hawke has promised to review, 5 key divisions would come to the city. They include shipping safety, the same department responsible for holding the tan bin in Newcastle Harbour in February this year. Pollution control is also included in its charter. Other divisions would oversee navigation, such as lighthouses and marker buoys, the registration of Australian ships, and the training and qualification of master mariners and engineers. Newcastle's local branch of the Master Mariners says the qualified people are available to staff the authority.
There are vacancies within the area which have not been able to be fulfilled in Canberra and will be able to be fulfilled by shifting the organisation to the seaboard. In other words, Newcastle has ample supplies of naval architects, marine engineers, master mariners.
Newcastle unions were represented in the delegation by Dennis Nichols, President of the Trades Hall Council. He says workers are willing to await the outcome of the review before any threats of industrial action enter the debate. Late today, a spokesman for Senator Collins, the minister responsible, said the review should take no more than a week, stressing the importance to the government in having the matter finalised quickly. John Church, NBN News.
So vital is track time that Queenslanders Wayne Monkey and Ross Brown will make the trip to compete against the best in this state. Included in the field to run against them are current New South Wales champion Darren Treloar and former Australian champion Phil McCurtain, as well as combinations from Wagga, Bathurst, Sydney and the Hunter Valley. Solo action will see the battle resume between youth and experience, as a host of young riders last week surprised everyone with their enthusiasm, close racing and aggressive riding, leaving former international and British League rider Sean Wilmot shell-shocked. Wilmot was awarded a controversial win in last week's final over Cessnock's young charger Jamie Plum, and it's sure to be as tight this Saturday evening. A full support program of modified hot rods, street stock sedans and leader sports will highlight the 2HD night.
Police Senior Constable Gary Lill and Parks and Wildlife Officer John Travers were among 44 people from around the state to receive awards. The elegant interior of Sydney Town Hall was in marked contrast to the dramatic setting 2 years ago when rescue crews were called to help two young spearfishermen trapped by a rising sea in a cliff-face cave. Constable Lill, who was attached to the police rescue squad at the time, volunteered to swim a lifeline into the cave mouth. Huge seas hammered the officer as he entered the cave. The return trip with the two unhurt youths was an operation of breathtaking danger. Wildlife Officer John Travers pulled the trio to safety, but he too was in peril of being engulfed and swept away. This afternoon, the incident was recalled by the Royal Humane Society. Constable Lill received a bronze medal for his efforts. John Travers was recognised with a certificate. A second police officer, Darryl Oakley, couldn't attend the ceremony. His part in the operation was also rewarded with a certificate.
The state government's excuse for suspending work on the notorious Swansea S-Bends is that it needs the money for flood-damaged roads in the west of the state. That might suit National Party Roads Minister Wal Murray, but it has Lake Macquarie's Mayor Ivan Welch breathing fire.
Well, I believe this is the straw that's broken the camel's back. This is the one that's going to make us get some action going. We're going to get off our backsides and we're really going to sock it to them. I believe that we can do something as a community, enlist the support of people like the Hunter Development Board, the Newcastle Chamber of Commerce and other reputable organisations can get behind us, and we can really slam it into this government on this particular issue.
The delay on delivering the promised bypass of the S-Bends has resulted in the Mayor calling a public meeting in Swansea tonight. And he says if the government won't listen to reason, then he'll be advocating radical action.
I believe that we will picket some of the offices of the government and hopefully disrupt the work that goes on there. Now that should get them to start thinking twice about what we're doing. But I need to talk to that with other people about that. But any radical plan that they come up with that's going to hold up the government and not inconvenience the people is what we're after.
It's almost impossible to say how long the diesel fuel leaked into the creek or the rate of flow. Estimates range from 5 to 10,000 litres, easily one of the worst spills into a Newcastle waterway in recent history. The mix of water and contaminated diesel was routinely bled off trackside fuel tanks and would normally have been pumped into a $1 million treatment plant for safe disposal. Instead, the mix seeped through a fractured pipe into the adjoining creek, where it was detected last night by neighbouring residents. They contacted the Hunter Water Board. The first stage of the clean-up was to dam the creek and mop up whatever remained. The creek flows into this stormwater channel, which in turn makes its way to Throsby Creek. Although dams have been put in place, it's feared that much of the spill has already escaped and is making its way right now to Newcastle Harbour. An oil slick boom, hastily borrowed from the Maritime Services Board, was slung across the storm canal at Wickham. Although much of the spill was caught, there was clear evidence of an oily film where the drain emptied into the environmentally sensitive shallows of Throsby Creek. Experts were confident that much of that slick would be caught when the tide brought the headwaters back up into the storm drain. By midday, State Rail was claiming the crisis was over, with the bulk of the spill contained or pumped into waste disposal drums before the worsening weather threatened to bring
rain and more trouble. The suspected source of the leak was also uncovered metres from the fuel dump. State Rail spokesman Rocky Condello blamed the sighting of the fuel tanks close to a natural waterway on an accident of history.
This facility is quite old. It's been here for quite some time. In the past, many years ago, people weren't environmentally aware as they are now. We are very aware of our situation here. We have a number of ponded areas in case we do get spills.
State Rail has already commissioned an environmental study of both the Broadmeadow depot and the Cardiff depot, the scene of another serious oil spill in March. Environment Minister Tim Moore said the apparently accidental nature of this spill wouldn't alone be enough to prevent prosecution.
If the SRA is prosecuted and they weren't negligent, it's a maximum of about $40,000. If they were negligent and you could prove that they knew about it in order to have prevented it, it could be up to $1 million. The most important thing is to clean it up.
It's understood State Rail are almost certain to face charges, if not from the SPC, then from the Hunter Water Board. In the meantime, monitoring of the waterways and wildlife on Throsby Creek is continuing. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
It's thought to be the first public corroboree in Newcastle for more than 150 years. 22 Aboriginal dancers from throughout New South Wales reliving the traditions of their grandfathers and their grandfathers before them. For the dancers, the resurgence of Aboriginal culture is a boon for all Australians, both black and white.
I think it's coming alive more and more, and I think younger people are finding the need to go into a past that they can identify with, like the Australian Aboriginal past, and that's one that we've got plenty of stuff that we can introduce them to, or they can find out about. And well, it's their past. Not only just is it for the Aboriginal people, but for 200 years the white men have been living in Australia. And, well, they're not going to leave, so we'd like to identify them with our past because it's Australian. It's pure Australian, that's what it is.
Situated just 8 kilometres southeast of Curry, this pocket of bushland is set to become a political battlefield. Backed by the state government, chemical giant ICI is keen to establish an explosives laboratory there, but the Green movement is predictably unimpressed.
We're very concerned about the waste management because we have got a fear that the ICI record with reference to waste management is not good. And so we are very concerned about what will be happening to emissions and whether things might leach out into the watercourse because they're on a creek there.
The Hunter Environment Association today held a public meeting to gauge support for their cause. The small but enthusiastic crowd was called on to put pressure on the Cessnock Council to look long and hard at the proposal before making a decision.
We're saying to people, ring them up and tell them if you've got concerns. And we have spoken to council aldermen and told them that we think that we need a lengthy period to look at the EIS when it does come out, something like 3 or 4 months.
ICI representatives attended the meeting but refused repeated invitations to address the gathering. The company's environmental impact statement is expected to be presented to Council within 6 weeks.
Angela Brooking is fascinated by all things mechanical.
I really like it. I really enjoy pulling things apart and looking at the insides of models and things.
But Angela is in a minority. In technology-based school subjects like tech drawing and woodwork, classes are still dominated by boys.
And we find that in some subjects in schools, they still tend to be girls' subjects or boys' subjects. Where the boys seem to be spilling over more and more into what were seen as girls' subjects, the girls are not reciprocating and moving into the boys' subjects in the numbers that we would like to see happen.
The Girls Technology Expo is a week-long residential workshop for 80 Year 8 girls from throughout the Hunter. 5 workshop groups will be exposed to various practical applications of technology. One group is using Lego to build computer-controlled models. Another is being introduced to the world of radio broadcasting. A newsroom has been set up and some students will prepare a daily expo newspaper using computer programming and writing skills. There's also a design class and a building workshop. Introducing girls to technology is more than just an effort at balancing boy-girl ratios in schools. It's become a necessity for their long-term career prospects.
Those are the subjects that are going to be important for careers in the future, and it's important that all students have the same opportunities to select those careers that we'll be offering in the future, which will be technology based.
This is your average country practice, a small cottage in a small town. It's sometimes home to 1 or maybe 2 doctors who run more than a general practice. As well as their regular patients, seen day in and day out for minor ailments, the country doctor takes on an added responsibility.
In most country towns, there are no resident medical officers, and as well as doing the normal GP work in the surgery, the country doctor also cares for the patient in the hospital, so that if, for example, a patient has a heart attack, the doctor won't only put them in the ambulance and send them to hospital, the doctor will then attend the patient at the hospital, do whatever resuscitation is necessary, and follow through on that patient's care.
Dr. Tolhurst is the co-author of a report in the latest Medical Journal of Australia. It shows the divergence in allowances for emergency and after-hours services. To be on call to attend cases at a district hospital, the doctors get $2.50 an hour. Their city counterparts can expect $8.85, specialists $11.90. This disparity was the driving issue behind the country doctors' dispute of 1987. Prior to that, rural doctors were paid nothing for being on duty at the hospital. A flat payment of $60 a day has since eased the financial pressures of rural GPs, but this latest study has highlighted new concerns.
Well, I think that this research has demonstrated that a lot of the patients that the country doctors are dealing with are very severely ill and require a lot of skill, and of course it's fairly stressful dealing with patients that are so severely ill. In a country town, also, the patients you're dealing with may be, in fact, people that you know personally. They might be your friends because it's a much more close-knit community. You've also got the problem of disruption, which I think we demonstrated in the study fairly well as well.
Sleep, or the lack of it, is also a problem. Just 25% of emergency calls were in normal hours. Many doctors reported disturbed sleep and stress as a result. There was also a reported need for better training and updating of skills. Some doctors felt trapped in their practice, unable to get away.
The Rural Doctors Association has actually been looking at initiatives to try and help with some of these problems that country doctors have, and particularly in the area of education, because I think that country doctors have particular needs in the educational area.
Is there a risk that medical services to those country towns may suffer if they don't have the right people?
Well, there is that risk, and it's always a worry because, in fact, in our research we showed that it was fairly frequently that doctors were required very urgently to attend patients, and I think that if there aren't adequate medical services, there could be patients' lives put at risk.